Jason and Mike. How are you, Jason?
I'm here.
He's here. And if you looked at the title of the video, you see it's Class A versus the rest. But we always kind of go through a lot of different things here on the show. We got the questions. That's me prepping the paper.
Yeah, or I can, maybe give them a little bit of what we're doing, and then we get into questions.
Oh yeah, and
Right.
we're definitely we'll get to the questions, but we're gonna start with a couple of stuff to kick it off that I think is very important because we're all here. If you can't tell, this is the retail establishment in Newhall, downtown Newhall. There's a bunch of people off camera you can't see right now, so we're doing a stream with a live audience. Everybody, can you say hi? Hi. See, whoa, we got a crowd today. So, Jason, why don't you kind of kick it off with what you had going, and we'll get to the questions in a little bit.
Well, maybe, we might have a crowd because of the theme. It's like I wrote a chapter on Class A. As I said, this is one of the most misused audio terms. It doesn't matter in some cases. It's not a big deal in other cases. There's many different forms of Class A, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And someone said, hey, you guys should maybe try to compare, the different kinds of Class A. And I'm like, well, that's a little difficult. I don't really have like a Class A single-ended speaker amp to compare to one that's like, a Class A push-pull and a Class A complementary. And then I realized what we do have is SchiitR, which is what we call continuity, which is not quite Class A. In fact, I think it was introduced with a chapter called Class A-ish. It runs about half Class A bias, so it's a little more efficient, but it has our own little trick to linearize the output and all that stuff. But I could take two SchiitRs. I could take one, take the continuity stuff out, bias it down into Class AB. Then you could do Class AB versus continuity. And I could take another one, bias it up into Class A, cross my fingers and hope it survives. Literally, it has a little fan on it, but we've hidden which one has a fan and all of that, and it may still blow up. We don't know. So we're going to listen to all three. We're going to listen to a Class AB SchiitR that's been modified, a standard SchiitR right off the sales rack, and a Class A SchiitR that's been modified. And again, it's had the continuity crap taken out of that. So it's Class AB versus continuity versus Class A. And we don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm not even going to listen to it, and I have not actually heard it. I'm going to let everyone here decide. There's only one dude who's going to know what it is, and he may have forgotten already. He's going to be the guy who's switching it. So this is not lab grade stuff. This is not, double, triple, super, quadruple, bloody, blah, blind. It's, certified for publication in a medical journal. This is us having fun and seeing if, there's any differences. If that sounds interesting to you, then I'm sure that Brian will probably let us know what the results are in the end. But for right now, I think it's a neat experiment. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that I think a lot of people think about a lot, and it's one of those questions when you first come into the hobby, you say, well, what is the difference? What's most popular, and what are the pros and cons of each? But that's easily dissected onto paper. But when you kind of think about what does it really, really sound like, I feel like that answer is much more mysterious. Yeah. Class A gets super hot. That's the con, right? Mm-hmm. But everybody says it sounds better. But I think I love these little ABs that we do here where we get a taste of it in real life, and then we get all these people to hear it, and it's not just what I think, it's what the collective kind of comes to. And I think you can attest to the outcome is not always as easy or as clear at the beginning as it is at the end.
Oh, no, it isn't. And we've had some people say, well, what if people like Class AB? It's like, fantastic. I'd love to sell you a much cooler running SchiitR that's easier to build. I have no problem with that. You need to save some money on that. And I'm like, well, what if they love Class A? It's like, well, if you can tolerate me sticking a fan on it and it being, $1,100, hey, that's on the table as well. So I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, it's a win-win-win. If y'all love continuity, well, hey, but we'll see. Don't know. We already saw that one. So if you love continuity, buy one.
So we don't usually do this, but I did kind of want to ask you before we got into it, if you personally, aside from the continuity one that you've obviously is the one you designed and you find it's your preference, generally speaking, do you have any observations what you feel Class A, AB sound like before we go in?
It depends on the implementation a lot. AB typically does sound more natural. It's a very nebulous term, but if you're thinking like, full, rich, natural, detailed, textured, effortless, that's typically, and actually no one brought up like, what if they all sound the same? It's like, well, cool, we may all be fooling ourselves too. That's fine as well. Then it's great, then we need to throw a Class D amp in there and see if we can tell the difference.
So there's no Class D in this one?
No, not this time, sorry. And, if we ever get a Class D that we consider sounds good, we will definitely throw it in there. We have not been able to do that. It doesn't mean no one can do it, but I mean we've really tried. And I mean I had Dave, or I suggested to Dave, and he worked on a bunch of stuff that's actually beyond the current state of the art. And gallium nitride, high switching rates, the whole 9 yards, and it was like, it's okay ish. And it's like, that's nice. Let's not do that. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's definitely not an audiophile favorite by any means. I think
Some people seem to love it.
It's used so frequently by the masses and so infrequently by the audiophile community. It's such a kind of a disconnect in a lot of ways compared to a lot of other things that we do similar.
I think it can be pretty decent inside a speaker, because you know what the load is. You can do the filtering specific to the load. It's when you start getting into general purpose stuff. Think about the output filter just between 8 and 4 ohms.
Yeah. Oof.
Much less 2 or a reactive load or, it's nuts.
Or electrostatic. Yeah.
Driving a transformer for an electrostat. Yeah, have fun with that too. There are places for every technology. But I think one of the telling things is there's no Class D headphone amp. There's no Class D preamp. There's no Class D anywhere where power output and size and temperature is not a factor. So you got to think about that.
Yeah.
Is there anything kind of inherent in the technology of Class A that really drives the sound that audiophiles are drawn to?
Oh God, I'll just be snippish and say, hey, they like, inconvenient, horribly, hot running, heavy, stupid things.
Anything that makes your life difficult. That's what they love.
No, it's
running in heavy.
Okay, the serious answer is Class A operation does get around some of the problems of essentially transitioning from one half of the waveform to the other when you're in a Class A-B situation. One of the transistors is then going to turn off. Mm-hmm. When transistors turn off and on, it's not ideal. It's not great. They don't like that. And so if you can keep it on all the time, theoretically at least, you get around some of the problems. You also run into other problems such as heat dissipation. You can still have transconductance doubling. You can have other problems, but it gets around one of them, and that could give you much better sonic performance.
So how does without going too deep into all the stuff, how does the continuity kind of solve some of the problems that you see with the other designs?
Continuity is kind of like, in Asia, it's kind of about half Class A bias. Our later ones are actually lower bias, but use a much more advanced correction method. What it does is it basically tries to take Class A-B, where you have an overlap region where both devices are running. If you're running a Class A-B amp quietly, you may be running Class A. It's all running within Class A. But then you get out of it, and the problem is that doubled transconductance, because you have both devices conducting, becomes one, because then you have one, and so it kind of droops off, and it's nonlinear. Bob Cordell has written a bunch about this. He's a big name amp designer. I'm not the only crazy person on the planet, but continuity is our way of, we add another device at the at the point where it starts drooping. And we try to extend that Class A type of operation region beyond Class A. You know, how well it works, what it sounds like, that's all, you know, matters of debate. But that's what we're trying to do. But it does one thing that neither Class A or Class AB amps typically do, which is it runs both N and P type devices, NPN and PNP devices, on both sides of the rail. So N and P devices never match exactly, even though, you know, the manufacturers say, oh, this is complementary. It's the same thing. You can run. No, they're not the same. They're always slightly different. And this way, we get around that because we're running both of them all the time. Nothing else does that. Class A doesn't do that. Class AB doesn't do that. So who knows? Maybe continuity will win and it'll be fantastic, but maybe it won't. Don't know. So we'll find out.
So when it comes to we talked about Class A, right? We talked about D. What does Class AB try to solve then in that equation?
It's more efficient. It's a more efficient way of doing things. Essentially, if you're able to, you know, turn off a device, you're saving power. And that's where you actually get into amps. Not only turn off a device, but they switch rails. They actually have like a 20-volt rail and a 40-volt rail and an 80-volt rail. And those are Class G or Class H designs where it actually shifts the rails as well. Those can get real efficient. Not as efficient as Class D. Class D is going to be the winner on efficiency. But Class AB is your first step towards more efficiency and higher power. And Class G is second step. Some people would argue Class D is the final step because, you know, you buy something the size of a pack of cigarettes, it gives you 80 billion watts or whatever, you know, they're up to now. I don't know. I'm exaggerating slightly.
Slightly.
Yeah.
80 billion is not small.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
I mean, it's obviously power consumption with cell phones is becoming so important. That the ubiquitousness of Class D is becoming a dominating presence in the market just out of necessity. But as we all know, audiophiles really don't do things that the mainstream can deem necessities.
They still sell a lot of turntables, don't they? Yeah, that's not exactly a poster child for convenient. So
I would have to argue, I think that maybe part of the inconvenience is part of the process.
It could.
I'm not going to say it's a joy, but it's at least a process to enjoy your stuff.
They sell so many turntables, it's now got us thinking, it's like, well, maybe we'll do a higher end phono preamp. I put that on HeadFi and solicited some comments. And, you know, right now we have no idea what we're going to do. If anyone's going to buy a Manny, don't panic. It's going to cost a lot more, and it's going to be for a lot crazier people. Manny is great. It's so great that we had to really debate if we wanted to do another. But, yeah, we're probably going to do another. So.
Yeah, because I think I've asked and queried you many times, like, get us a low-cost tube preamp in the market because they're all just so expensive.
Oh, dude. Well, I can dig out that one that you and Dave did. That thing has some problems, so let me tell you.
Hum?
No, let's hum. It's like, it looks like it was laid out by some drunk dude with tape. You know, in like 1974. Yeah. So, yeah, tubes are probably not on the table. Yeah, I know. Listen, everyone's like, oh, it's terrible. What if I can make it sound better?
Well, the good thing about tubes is when there's a discontinuity, like there is when the transistor switch is off, tubes are the very best at that.
Yeah, and tubes are, you know, tubes started in Class A. I mean, Class A, and then you got push-pull, and then eventually they got into AB, which is, But tubes are better. I mean, when they turn off, they kind of turn off gradually, not like, you know, transistor, ding, you know, and then on, ding. Yeah, it's really bad. So that's why Class AB and other things, have problems like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a dream project on this subject that you'd like to execute at like cost no object, or is the tier kind of an execution of that?
Tiers are cost no object. We debated doing a 300 watt times 2 amp and a tier chassis, but it wouldn't be a higher end amp; it'd just be higher power, and it'd be It'd be a single-ended thing. You could bridge it, and I was like, it wouldn't have a choke. It's just, I don't think it's us. I mean, there's plenty of people doing high power amps. Go buy Emativa. They do a great job at super high power amps. But maybe that's not us. I mean, hell, we'd be much more likely to bring out something that has 5 or 10 watts and sits on a desktop. No hints there.
Well, yeah, because I would look at these questions that we get a lot. Basically, I can sum most of them up in what's coming up, and tell me all the secrets. That's what they want to know.
Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
We'll dissect it a little more. You ready for some questions, or you got?
Yeah.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Well, let's actually throw it out to the audience we have here. Does anybody have something in the audience to ask? You can just step up to the mic. Anyone? Feel free. There's gonna be a lot of dead air. All right.
Here we go.
Yeah. So I was interested to hear that you thought Class AB is typically thought of as more like natural sounding. Is that what's that?
A.
Oh, A.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
AB is a compromise.
AB is a compromise.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So and then transconductance. That's kind of the issue with AB, right? Is that what you're? Is it droop? Is that what you call it?
Well, I call it droop.
Okay.
Cordell calls it transconductance doubling because in the Class A bias region of Class AB, it does have Class A in it, you get double the transconductance because both devices are conducting. Once you're out of that, when one's off, then suddenly the transconductance of the circuit is half of what it was. So it's the transfer function, instead of looking, the transfer function should look pretty much like a straight line. Sorry, doing it for the camera. It kind of looks like this weird kind of hinky like thing where it kind of falls off at the edge, at the higher levels, and that's not ideal. It's also pretty much exactly the opposite of tubes, which are a square law type thing. Their transconductance typically goes up. With higher voltage. So I don't know.
So that's frequency. So if you were to look at the actual waveform, would you see the transistors kind of trading or handing off?
If you actually look at if you isolate them, you can actually see where they cut off.
Okay, and it's not the zero crossing, right? It's like
it's after zero crossing. Because if it's Class B, then it would be at Class B you'd have 0.6 volts of dead space if it's a transistor. And a lot more if it's an enhancement MOSFET. So, I mean, the bottom line is everything has trade-offs, and when you get into actually designing this, you find out that there's a lot of trade-offs everywhere, and you'll never get a perfect thing. Tier is our kind of thing that's like, this is the most correct and right thing we can do with the best power supply we can throw at it. Sub $15,000, and we are not doing $15,000 amps ever. Thank you.
Ever.
Well, unless a Big Mac costs $250, then who knows? Or if our suppliers keep coming back with quotes that are 2x. Sorry, that happened today, and I'm like, really? Sorry. It's been an interesting day. Let's just put it that way.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Any questions?
I'll tell them
Question
all the secret stuff.
about phono preamps.
Yes.
I understand that maybe you did 8 or 9 years ago a tubed phono preamp. That,
Mike did. Mike and Dave did.
Oh, okay. But that apparently didn't float anybody's boat to the point where you actually released it?
Well,
We were distracted more.
yeah, we were distracted. It was no feedback, passive EQ.
And it used JJ ECC88s, and it pretty much had to be those because that was part of the RIA.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of the passive RIA. So one of the problems is if you do tubes, if you're talking pure tube, you either got a lot of tubes because then you have cathode followers in there. Yeah. Yuck. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to have to factor in the plate resistance, and if you're doing a passive network. Then it's like, not only might we say, hey, you got to use ECC88s, we might have to say, you have to use JJ ECC88s, and you better hope they don't age, to a higher plate impedance, kind of thing. So there's a lot of trade-offs. It's like, I hate to say this, but the best way to do a tube, Mike will probably shoot me now, a tube phono preamp is hybrid, where actually you have a tube input, and then you have, basically a MOSFET or something, low impedance output, then your RIA, and then another tube, and you could probably just do tube output from there. Yeah. But there would be sand in it. There'd be semiconductor devices in there. And for some people, they're like, oh, no, don't want to have that. We want pure tube. It's like, okay.
Okay, but I mean, judging by Folkvanger, you're not afraid of throwing lots of tubes at a problem, so I would suggest that there is a market for what you might do in that way.
It's a limited market, though.
So was Folkvanger.
Yeah, and people still want them. In fact, I think one of the questions, you going to do it again? It's like, no. No. We're kind of out of tubes. So.
Oh, no.
We're not out of tubes, but we don't have enough tubes to continue doing Folkvanger.
Oh, I'm glad I got one then while it was still available.
Yeah. And people can get 8 tubes, for the output. Not that big a deal. It's just, getting 8,000 is a different ballgame.
Well, just in case you do decide to go all tube preamp, phono preamp, count me in.
Okay.
The hardest.
Tube MC. I broke the mic. There we go. Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Good questions, all. Good questions. No? All right, let's get into what we got here. These ones are the ones that you sent in early. Well, the first one's about supply chain, I think, mostly. So how are things going and shit in this new year? Any major surprises or issues yet? Supply chain concerns? Anything new that you can hint about? Like I said. I think the most important one in this is the supply chain, because it's constantly in flux.
It's better.
It's better.
Asking prices doubled today.
Yeah, it's better in general. The supply chain is better as far as supply. DSPs are still an issue. Dave and Ivan are still working on that. We're working on multiple things to get around that. Murphy's Law states that as soon as we get the TI solution figured out, then analog devices will ship parts, and also we'll be able to get FPGAs, and it'll be solved 3 ways. Yeah. So, that is the way it is. So we're working on that. There's no other big surprises other than hopefully some of our suppliers are watching this, because you know what, you guys suck. Here's the thing. Okay, we got inflation, right? I get it. I understand that. Inflation does not mean 2x. 2x is extortion. Right. That is not inflation. So you know what? We will just go and find someone else in the U.S. There's lots of other people who want to do it.
1.15x.
Yeah. Or if they haven't done it for a few years, 1.25. Whatever. Yeah. But it's not 2. And so, I really hope someone's watching this, because, feel guilty a little bit. Because I'm trying to keep the prices steady for our customers. It's really hard to do that.
I think one of the more interesting things that we talked about historically on the show is that the cost between black and silver. Some people might be curious, why are the costs different for those
Silver
two?
costs more to make. Silver is more difficult. Whenever we show the silver metal to any potential supplier, they run away screaming, saying, "Oh, this is way too hard to do. You guys you want crazy consumer finish. We don't want to do that. Why don't you make that in China?" It's like, well,
that's why we're talking to you.
We don't want to make it in China, so we went to doing black and a price increase on silver, and so now we're showing them black, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can do that for like 2x what you were paying." I'm like, "Wait, no.
No.
Hold on. You really want to send this to China? Don't worry, we won't. We will not send this to China. But we're going to be looking all around the U.S. for some new suppliers."
Yes.
So as soon as I'm back in Texas, I'm going up to Sinton, and also to Texarkana, and we'll see what we got.
I'm not sure. Maybe you know what this means. Any plans for another NITCHS collab after the phenomenal Piety?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's up to them. If they want to do something, that's cool. We have plenty of designs that I don't think exactly fit what we do. We did that Magni, the little crazy Magni with 8 billion transistors and programmable output stage.
You did?
Yeah, Nietzsche did that. It's not ours. So, but yeah, it's great for them. It's a neat sounding Magni.
Okay.
But then so yeah, that's up to them. As far as what's coming, with any luck, not next week after, you'll see a couple new things, which shouldn't be. It's a new idea, but it shouldn't be too surprising. And if everything holds, then probably mid-March, you'll get the big crazy idea that either will be really big or really stupid, and you can't move it with X-Lax.
It's really big or really stupid.
Yeah, it's either really big or really stupid. I don't know yet. So far, the people who've had it are real excited about it, but we don't know. It's unlike anything in audio right now, period.
Come on.
Yeah, come on. I ain't going to say it. Get me killed before this thing is actually out. So, you'll see.
Do you guys, you've done this on a couple of things, but is there any consideration other than black and silver and red?
Hopefully no more red. I'd like to move us to black and silver and the dark gray for the bottoms. Alex and Tyler had this great idea to do some wacky colors, golden red and call it like Steelman edition and
10,000 SKUs
and the white and black and call it the Hurricane Trooper type thing. And I'm like, no. Let's not do that. And they saw on Nietzsche chose a bunch of different colors for their magnet. They saw all the trouble they were having. They're like, yeah, no, we're good. Actually, choosing color, whether it's powder or anodized, is a bit of an art form because is it shiny? Is it dull? Is it kind of shiny? Is it kind of dull? Does it take screening? Does it take UV printing? It's not as simple as you might think. Plus, every color is a whole nother SKU, meaning it's something we have to put on the shelves, and we don't particularly want to do that. What you're going to see is probably less color. Don't be surprised if silver gets even more expensive.
Well, in all fairness, it used to just be silver for the longest time. So
yeah, and we had a couple dudes who could do silver really well, and now they're all gone. So I'd love to paint all the big stuff, including the silver, but I know that'll get me shot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I guess I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the tube plate affecting impedance, because this is one of those things I think that surprised me when I first got into the hobby was that if something gets old and corroded, be it on the plate or even just a connection, it can actually have a small amount of effect on the impedance of the situation. Is that correct? It can.
That's less of what I was talking about. More just that tubes have an inherent plate impedance. That they have an RP essentially, and you need to design that in. So, and it does change a bit, as they age.
Yeah. So I'm just saying is if you get into it and you love the hobby, do update your tubes. They're not eternal for that reason, among others, right?
They're not eternal. Yeah, I just swapped out some old ECC 85s I had in my Mjolnir too. And it's like, oh, that's what it used to sound like. Yeah.
When is Valhalla due for an update?
Oh God, it was going to be this year, and I'll just say it. It was going to be this year. Now it'll probably be at least a couple of years because some crazy person bought about 10 billion Valhalla 2 transformers. So I was going to change over the design with a new transformer and everything. But guess what? We're going to be making Valhalla 2s for at least a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no, it would not get 4 output tubes.
I own 2 SchiitRs. Would you consider an SchiitR V2 to function with the same Class A bias, but that could produce more current in order to properly handle 4 ohm speakers?
Would you consider changing the laws of physics?
I would consider it.
Would you consider buying Vidars, which is what you need if you're actually going to be driving very difficult loads?
It seems what you're saying is that you provide solutions to these things through different product lines. So,
or if you want that kind of product, then tier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's solved in multiple ways. It's just not solved in that form factor with continuity style bias.
For head amps like the Asgard 3 and the Jotunheim 2, there's a certain volume level that determines. Is there a certain volume level that determines when you start going out of Class A bias? You previously mentioned unless you're really cranking it, you'll stay in Class A.
It depends on the headphones you're using. I mean, if you're using 300 ohm headphones, you got a lot more Class A than a pair of 25 ohm headphones. Most typical listening volumes are going to probably be running in Class A at 300 ohms, and most moderate listening volumes are going to be running in Class A at 25 ohms. I have to caveat that because we do literally actually have people who say, yeah, I got a Magni Heretic and I run it turned all the way up from a 2-volt source in high gain, with an EQ in there, and also, running into fairly efficient 30 ohm headphones. I'm like, really? And you can hear things. Interesting. So, yeah, my idea of typical listening levels may not be yours. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh. Always listen at reasonable levels, guys. Right?
Thanks, Mom.
Which
I said thanks.
Hut? I can't hear you. What's up? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Would Schiit ever consider a Class AB car audio amp similar to the ones in the early 90s?
No. Yeah, I know. They pretty much went to
12
Class
volt
D, right?
Yeah, it says, Class
Yeah.
D is the choice there, right?
Yeah, no. That's not us.
No. Would Schiit ever make a pure Class A head amp?
We did, and we are going to. The original Asgards were, and the upcoming Mjolnir 3 is. So yes, we are. We have and we are. As far as like, will Asgard ever become Class A again? It's like, I don't think so. Then it has to get more expensive, and I don't think that's going to happen.
This gentleman says he's read and heard that the tier is amazing. Was the initial idea, design process, and production a long one?
30 years?
30 years, yeah. The turd was
Yeah.
30 years ago?
93. The turd was 93. Or 92, maybe even. It was
Yeah.
right around.
31, wow.
Yeah, because I was writing a thing about like, oh shit, no, I can't say that. Sorry, because that gives away one of the things. But the company after.
Yeah.
But no, that Mike actually had a pair of, what were they? They were Levinson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cello.
Yeah, sorry, cello monoblocks. And, he said, hey, this is 1993. And he's like, oh, these are great. They're wonderful. Your sumo gear's kind of okay, but, these are really wonderful. And I'm like, I can beat those fucking things with our cheapest sumo amp. Mm-hmm. And Mike's like, yeah, you've been smoking some really funny shit. That ain't going to happen. Mike's like, yeah, but if you really want to do it, do a choke. Put a choke on it.
Mm-hmm.
Do choke input.
Choke input power
And I'm like,
supply.
okay, it's kind of weird. So I did that and tweaked it up and changed it over from MOSFET to bipolar. And eventually, after some tweaking, we killed the cellos with a $549 amp that had $50 of shit stuck on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fantastic. That's great. Never made it, never produced it because who wants a relatively low power crazy amp with a big choke hanging out of it. So,
Yeah.
But that's how it started, and we were actually going to do a choke input amp, a much more powerful, and never got around to it because Mike's like, all these audio files are crazy, Theta's nuts, and we're kind of out of here. But we did actually think about that. So that actually kind of sat in the back of my mind for years, and we just kept revisiting, and eventually.
So the turd became the tears.
Turd became tears.
And
And that is literally what we called it. We called it the turd. And we had the turd 2s as well, the monoblocks.
Yeah, monoblocks.
And then now tier.
Yeah.
Slightly more tasteful.
Yeah.
Slightly. Okay, so I'm gonna take this one from online. I like this. Any chance for a lower powered bookshelf speaker amp that's a complementary design to the Magni Modi? You know, like a little guy just.
That'd be a little itty bitty amp.
It'd be tiny, right?
That'd be like
Class D. Class D.
no. Now, well, I mean, here's the thing. You'd be amazed what you can do with 2 or 3 watts, and that's about the size of amp that you'd get. I just ballparking. Just spitballing. It's not like I just know this, but that's about what you get as a Class AB. And like if you're talking a Jotunheim, that might be more like about 10 watts, per channel RMS. But you'd be amazed what 2 watts actually sounds like, even with crappy efficient speakers like Kef LS50s. Again, spitballing, not like I really know anything about this at all. So.
Any chance you're gonna have another meet like the one you did in December?
Yes, I'd like to do that meet again, and I'm sure I'll do it when we're back in Texas, and we're going back in a couple weeks, so maybe a month, maybe a little bit more. We'll get people together over at New Aces.
Oh, I thought they were talking about the Texas Roundup, but this is the specific meet out there.
The Roundup, I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but we are going to have a number of interesting meets.
All right.
So and I'd actually like to go out and see some of the people at the shit kit meets. Where we send out a kit of products. I know there's people that wanted to do stuff in Bowling Green and play. I'm like, I'll go there. So yeah, that's a hint. You want to do a meet, I'd be there. I'd be up for showing up, especially if it's a place where there's a bunch of whiskey.
You hear that, guys? All it takes is a bottle of expensive whiskey, and Jason
or
will show up.
wine or beer. I'm not picky.
This is a kind of an interesting question. Will we see more adoption of toroidal transformers? Is it considered an upgrade for the Ragnarok?
You are going to see more just because that's what's gettable these days, and also more affordable. I considered it an upgrade for Ragnarok. Mike is probably throwing up in his shirt right now, but it did work for Ragnarok. It works for some things.
It works for some things. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you'd see that as a universal. I don't think you're going to see us switching over TIR or Vidar, but.
Yeah.
It really depends. I mean, if I can get an affordable toroid made in the U.S. versus at $8 billion EI, which is really what we're looking at now, it's guess what? Going to be a lot more toroids.
How much are toroid winders?
We ain't going to be winding our own toroids. Please let's not do that. Because we're talking about doing our own boards.
I know that. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Ugh.
What's it? I was just gonna say, what wine are you drinking this time around?
I don't know. We actually have it's blind. There are 2 California wines.
Really?
And 2 Texas wines. I believe, if I'm correct, I'm drinking the Texas Mourvedre from William Chris Winery. But we have 2 from a local winery here, Pulcella, and then we have 2 from a Texas winery up in Hye, Hye.
So you started talking a little bit, and we're good on the questions here. So I just wanted to diverge a teeny bit that Texas wines should not be overlooked. Since you've moved to Texas,
They shouldn't be.
has your opinion changed at all about Texas wines?
It has not changed. It is still, there is going to be more hit and miss. A lot of people don't know about Texas wines because apparently most of them are drank within Texas. They stay in Texas, and which brings to mind a great marketing thing. If there are any Texas wine industry people, it's you know what? You start advertising in California with the tagline, "None for you."
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I'm pretty sure you're it in terms of the Texas marketing committee.
And believe me, everyone, wait a minute, I can't get that? Fuck that, I can get that. I'm going to get that. And then, it doesn't matter if it's better or not. The the thing is, Texas does some very good wines. California does some very good wines. California has an edge probably in general. If you're going to stumble into a winery, you know, will it be good or bad? Probably more likely in California, but Texas does some fantastic stuff, and they're learning. You know, it's like those horrible, you know, science fiction things. You encounter the weird alien that may or may not be nice, and it's like, it's learning. So Texas is learning. So, you know, California, be afraid.
Texas are teachable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is.
I got a question from the audience here. Go ahead, sir.
I understand that you're using a choke in the new Mjolnir.
Yes, 2 of them.
Is choke just a buzzword, or is there a serious advantage?
No,
There's a serious advantage
yeah.
sonically.
Yeah, it's a...
Please elaborate.
It's like get the idea between bad solid state and bad tube designs. Bad solid state designs will hurt your ear, and bad tube designs will be mushy, okay, and non-offensive. And the key root is non-offensive.
Yeah, the
Chokes are non-offensive.
The chokes are interesting. I mean, they're an energy storage device like a capacitor, but they are in a lot of ways more efficient, more power. You know, essentially more power dense. You do not want to short a choke. That's really
ugly.
really ugly. And in Mjolnir 3, we went full crazy. It's like everything's dual mono. It's a separate transformer for each channel. It's a separate choke for each channel. It's a separate channel for each channel. Separate heat sink for each channel. Everything's all separate. So it's the best thing we can do in the solid state form factor. It's an interesting comparison to Folkvanger. Folkvanger is, you know, the warmer, happier, you know, tubier amp. But Mjolnir 3 is super engaging. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I just listened to the prototype, and darn you, now I want one.
It's working.
Chokes are
pretty amazing if you got
Yeah.
the budget for them. The problem is, it's like, for the price of one of those chokes, you can put 50 capacitors in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people tend not to do that. Plus, you got to ship it around, so you got weight and everything. The capacitors are fairly light, you know. So that's why no one does them anymore.
Someone asked, this is probably our last question here. You've tried the Texas wines, but what about Texas whiskey?
Whiskey is interesting. I actually like Texas whiskey, but that is a particular thing because it's so hot in Texas that the whiskey ages at an insane rate. It's like they'll like bring out something and they go, "Oh, this is our 3-year whiskey," and you're like, "That's not a 25." You know, if you're used to Scotch, they're like, "No, it's 3-year," and it's like, "Oh, if you like oaky or more tannic takes on whiskey, it's really good. If you, I actually like Texas bourbons. Texas ryes are a bit too bitey, typically. And, you know, that's painting with a broad brush. There's a bunch of distilleries in Texas, so you just gotta try them.
Cool. That's it. Anything else?
Question number 12.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any theoretical benefit to processing a signal with both singularity and multi-bit under one architecture? In other words, a hybrid approach utilizing the strengths of both technologies.
Well, if I can get this out, 1-bit architectures, what are commonly known as 1-bit, which Jason has dubbed singularity, is there's a modulator, but there's also a filter, a multi-bit filter driving the modulator. And then the modulators can be anything from 1-bit to 7 or 8-bit. The bits are reduced from 16. I know this is old school, but I'm an old guy. And what makes the the shit multi-bit stuff special, and I mean special, is our 8 times or 4 times or 2 times or whatever the fuck it is.
Well, you've implemented it in all of those.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's the filter.
it's the filter.
Yeah.
And our filter is the only one where if you put a 16-bit 44-1 or 48 signal into it, you get all the original bits out. And then there's the modulator, which was all the work on the singularity, which is done, except for the analog.
Yeah, I'm working with Dave on that. Once he gets TI, I'll get him going. It's like it's the settling time.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fine.
it's got to settle at 6 megahertz.
We have we have a lot of really cool like analog tech to throw at it because what a lot of people don't know is there's a lot of interesting analog stuff we've done, including and this plays into the phono preamp thing. Nexus is quite happy being run as a transimpedance amplifier, which should excite people who like moving coil cartridges.
Yeah.
So, and it can also run as a voltage amp, and you can switch modes. So, and we have a lot of current feedback stuff that's very fast. It settles very fast. We can throw all that at this problem. We have a lot bigger quiver of technologies than I think than we ever have anyway, and than a lot of other people have. But I'll be working with Dave on that.
Yeah.
So I already told him. I think he's got the hooks in it. So we'll put that.
Well,
in the
I
bag.
haven't mentioned it to him.
Yeah, he
Other than he knows it's coming.
yeah, and he's gonna try some commercial stuff too, and we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fine.
Yeah. So just to get rid of the dependence on ICs in our digital stuff.
Yeah, because actually any kind of complex IC is still scary supply chain. It could be scary. Right now everything's looking better, but burned once, twice cautious.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I can do all the discrete stuff we want. It's fantastic. So
Yeah.
and Mike's over there going, "Give me one DSP that works."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got lots of shit I can do.
Yeah.
Except for drivers. The driver apocalypse for the amps has come, but we're designing around that. We actually end up with same drivers, different package. Typical stupid stuff these days.
Which is still a whole new circuit board.
And new clips.
And new, and new heat.
Is what it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we get to listening?
Yeah, we should. We should. And then these guys can tell us how crazy we are and whether we should be doing A, B, or continuity, or all three, or none.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We got some listening to do. Blind A/B. Very excited to hear the differences, and we'll report back and let you know what we think. Everybody's been a shit stream. Jason Stoddard, Mike Moffett.